Welcome to another episode of Free Talk Live. The phones are open if you want to join the show. All you got to do is dial in at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Coming up, we got some news about another potential attack on cryptocurrency at the federal level. Plus, we'll get into what's happening with Subway under boycott. We'll explain what has happened there with you tonight. You've got Ian.
The nobody formerly known as Rich Paul.
And Chris.
So we'll get into the crypto sanctions bill, I believe is what the term was. It sanctions, Chris, that you wanted to talk about? Crypto sanctions?
Yeah,
so
it is. It's fair to call it sanctions.
We'll see who they're sanctioning in that case. But first, we've been talking about all these voluntary, not sanctions-related targeting, but just because corporations want to show how woke they are and take a position on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. We've just been seeing, I think it's now numbering in the hundreds of companies that have decided to cut off the people of Russia from any kind of services. Actually, according to this story at Newsweek.com, it's now been more than 400 companies around the planet, most of which are, a lot of them are U.S.-based mega corporations. Netflix, for instance, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, McDonald's, many different mega corporations.
I wonder if that's going to increase the lifespans in Russia.
Because they're not eating McDonald's?
Yeah, no Pepsi, no McDonald's, no Coke.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Starbucks apparently have cut them off, but not Subway, according to this story. With 446 franchised shops across the country, Subway is so far refusing to sever ties with Russia. Customers across the world, of course, have not taken the company's decision well. Calls to boycott Subway have been spreading like wildfire on social media, with Twitter users declaring their surprise at finding the company in the list of businesses refusing to quit Russia. At Yankee Mommy 1 on Twitter says, grew up with Subway as they're from my hometown in Connecticut. Used to eat at the first and only location. I'm surprised as they're a company in one of the most democratic areas, misspelled with an apostrophe S, of the country. Never will I eat there again, she says.
Wow.
Another one, at Wen Lindy says, I haven't been
You know, they didn't sever ties with America when they invaded Iraq either.
No, and that's an excellent point, nobody. Almost no one severed ties with the United States.
Apparently, Democrats really care about this kind of thing if it's white people.
Oof.
Wow. There's some truth to that, but
wow. At Wen
That's harsh.
Lindy says, I haven't been to a Subway forever. Now I'll never go back to one. Which, of course, somebody else pointed out in the comments, like, well, that's not a really effective boycott. If you're saying you are not a regular customer, you have not been to Subway in forever, and now you're never going to go back, well, not a real strong statement. But anyway, so, there's a bunch of people that are upset about this. Some users complain that a boycott would only hurt local franchise owners that are already hurt by sanctions instead of punishing the company itself. Subway has no corporate operations in Russia. There are approximately 450 franchised restaurants in Russia, which are all independently owned and operated by local franchisees and managed by an independent master franchisee.
So what exactly could the Subway Corporation even do? Chances are they are not shipping a bunch of lunch meat over there physically from America.
No.
They could deny these people permission to use their intellectual property, but how are they going to get that enforced under Russian law?
So I'm a little bit familiar with, I've talked to Subway franchisees, I guess,
really?
Yeah, over the years on a number of occasions. And as I understand it, there are franchisees who are not even getting their meats through like the official Subway sources.
Interesting.
It would basically probably have zero impact if Subway decided to, quote unquote cut off their Russian franchisees. Basically, the only thing that's going to happen is American businesses are going to lose money, but it's going to have no impact on the Russian franchisees owners because they can continue operating just as they were with or without the corporate headquarters.
They just don't have to pay franchise fees anymore.
Right, exactly. And it's interesting because it's Russia has also said that they're going to basically not enforce intellectual property law.
Is that official now?
American,
I know they were talking about that. I didn't know if that was like a done deal at this point.
I don't know if the order has been like actually issued yet, but it's almost, I think, a certainty that it's going to happen, because how is Russia going to sort of defend itself in a sense from these sanctions, right? I mean, they've got to do something in order to counter them, and there's not that many things they can do, but one of the things that they can easily do is not enforce intellectual property law of American companies or companies that are based out of countries that are sanctioning them, at least. So, and I say that because not all countries are sanctioning Russia. So.
True. That's true.
Yeah.
There was a story just the other day.
If it was me, I wouldn't even go by country. I'd just say, hey, if your company is cutting us off, great. We have no respect for your intellectual property. Have a nice day.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a much better position than what they were talking about doing, but thankfully didn't do. There was somebody in the Russian government who apparently had proposed nationalizing these companies, and apparently Putin said, no, we're going to respect private ownership in this particular case, which obviously was the right decision to make.
That's more than Justin Bieber up in Canada could manage. What's his name?
Trudeau.
Yeah, I mean,
took me a moment.
It's interesting. People, it's kind of funny. It's kind of counters Sarah, who always calls into the show. What she's saying about how they're secretly communist, and it's like, no, they're not. That's what a socialist state would probably do in this
nationalize
circumstance. But they're not a socialist state. You can call them a mafia state. You can call them. There's all sorts of names you can call them. But a socialist is not one.
I mean, what they are is fascist. Because there's because of the interrelationship between the business community and the government, and I would say that America is fascist as well.
Sure. Well, it's a mix. There's socialism, there's fascism. It's in all the isms.
Well, fascism is a form of socialism. It's just that it's not Marxist. Instead of the Marxist model, they have an unholy alliance of big business, big labor, and big government that kind of teams up and screws everybody else.
If they are getting rid of intellectual property protections, doesn't that technically lessen the fascism?
I mean, I assume it would certainly lessen the fascism if they stopped enforcing intellectual property completely, but I assume they're going to do it selectively.
Yeah, I'm not clear on how that's all going to play out.
It was selective in at least what I was reading, unfortunately.
So they'll still protect Russian-owned businesses or corporations.
I mean, and that kind of makes sense in a sense because of what their motivation and objective is. They're obviously not trying to hurt their own people, so to speak, or their own businesses, or at least they're not, or I shouldn't say their own people, but they're not trying to hurt their
it's not
the people
who
in power,
benefit
right?
from copyright and patent. It's corporations.
Right. And this is the thing. This is the thing that people frequently forget. Like, the people of Russia are hurting because of Putin's actions, maybe, but the people who are benefiting or they want to benefit are not necessarily the general population. It's like certain people in power and the people surrounding Putin and things of that nature. So
yeah, I'm actually really happy to see this about Subway because when I first heard that McDonald's and these other companies were shutting down, I thought, well, what about the franchisees? I mean, unless all McDonald's in Russia are corporate owned, What about the franchise agreements that these companies have? And so here you got Subway saying, yeah, look, we're under agreement here with these people. We can't just, we can't renege on this.
Even if it was
matters.
corporate run, it wouldn't matter, because ultimately at the end of the day, everything you need is already being done in Russia for the most part anyway. So they're just going to, as you say, nationalize it, or allow the people who are running it to basically become owners of the business as opposed to the corporation that's overseas.
There's more coming up here if you want to join the show. Your thoughts on what's been going on in Russia. And we got crypto news on the way as well. You can take control of the airwaves here on Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover springs her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and the phones are open if you want to join the show here at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. So, joining you in the studio, by the way, you've got Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris.
Don't forget, you can join us online over at freetalklive.com. We have our own social media website. It is run on our server. It is not some sort of big media, big tech thing. It's a Mastodon server, which means it acts like Twitter, does a lot of the things that Twitter does without being, the evil big tech corporation. So we get to set the rules, and that means you got more freedom to speak over at social.freetalklive.com. That's social.freetalklive.com. We are talking about the news that apparently Subway is not going to be freezing their support for their franchisees in Russia, where there are 450 franchised operators there, franchised restaurants. I don't know if there are 450 operators, but because a lot of times one franchisee has a bunch of restaurants. But they say, quote, "We don't directly control these independent franchisees and their restaurants and have limited insight into their day-to-day operations." I remember back when, 2013, 2014, somewhere in that range, when there was news that a Subway franchisee in the United States had started taking Bitcoin.
That's right.
Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They did whatever changes they needed to do to their checkout system that, I guess it wasn't completely, off limits. Maybe they had some sort of independent checkout system.
There are things that the franchisee owners are not allowed to do with their stores. There are rules, just to be clear. It's just
right, like branding rules and things like that, right?
Yeah,
quality rules,
yeah,
cleanliness rules,
absolutely. But as far as sourcing food and things like that, like, as I said, I've heard of franchisee owners who have sourced food from other sources and not through the Subway official channels. So
I bet you some companies are tighter on that than others.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because like when I saw the news that Burger King had, there was a whole story that we talked about Burger King having 850 locations, but again under a franchise in Russia, and that Burger King's home corporation owned 15% of that entire operation, so they weren't in charge of it. But so they said they couldn't stop them, they couldn't shut down those operations, but they also claimed that they were no longer quote unquote supporting them. So that sounded to me like they were cutting off the supply of the food, but it wasn't clear.
I can't believe that they would be shipping food from America to Russia.
No, they're not.
That's got to be about the most expensive way to obtain food in Russia.
Well, but they may have official
America.
Suppliers on that continent.
Yeah, this is the problem.
They may, but if those suppliers are actually in Russia, then they're in the same boat as the franchisees, so they might as well just keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah, and that's the whole point. That's the whole reason why these franchisee owners are not going to be impacted by this, because their source of the food, a lot of the source of this food, these sorts of things, they're coming from within Russia. There are certain countries that import food. Russia's not one of them. Russia produces and exports food. So this is not,
it's a big country.
Yeah, it's a huge country. It's a huge country. I think is it the largest country in the world in terms of landmass? It's up there. It's up there.
That's a good question, because the way they show you on the globe, it actually looks larger than it really is by comparison.
But it's huge.
It is big.
It is huge.
So a little bit more here from this story at Newsweek about again, people now boycotting Subway, which of course makes no sense at all, right? Like it's again this whole thing of, we've got to signal how with it we are for everybody out there, and we're going to boycott Subway. These are just franchisees for the most part. I don't know what percentage of stores are actually corporate, but a bunch of these Subways out there are run by franchisees. They have no input basically into what corporate decides to do.
They have about as much. They don't have any control over what corporate does.
Right.
And on the other side of it, the Russian franchisees have about as much control over Putin as we had over George Bush when he was starting random wars.
Right.
We would have liked to stop him, but, what are you going to do? They've got all the guns. They're guarding all the doors, and they're holding all the keys.
Starbucks has temporarily closed its 130 licensed locations in the country, and they claim Burger King halted operations in its almost 800 franchises, but we know that's not necessarily completely true. Yum Brands, which operates 1,000 franchised KFC and Pizza Huts in Russia, has also stopped supporting those restaurants. Again, what does that actually mean when it comes to being the corporate sponsor or whatever, the mother behind these franchisees, for the corporation to stop, quote unquote, supporting? What does that really actually entail?
Yeah, what they're probably talking about is marketing, because that's one of the big things that, like when you're a franchisee, is that you're getting
for the franchise fees
for the franchise fees.
They buy the corporation buys the advertising, and you benefit from it.
Right, they're paying for marketing, buying ads on television and newspapers and online and things like that.
That's why you always see that asterisk at participating locations,
right?
Whenever there's like an advertisement for a sale or whatever.
Yeah.
And, of course, it'd be crazy for a location to not actually participate in that, but I guess some of them have the option to not participate in a
There
promotion.
may also be another reason for that. In certain cases, there might be like, I don't know, like maybe in Alaska or someplace
where costs are higher.
Get certain ingredients or the costs are higher or whatever, and so they won't offer one thing or another in certain locations.
Papa John's has also suspended all corporate operations in Russia, including those supporting its independent franchisees. In the cases of both Burger King and Papa John's, the companies each have...
They couldn't possibly get pepperoni from Italy.
each have one independent franchisee they said they are unable to shut down. Subway said that it will redirect any profits from operations in Russia to, quote, humanitarian efforts supporting Ukrainians who have been affected by the war, and that it's working to provide meals for Ukrainian refugees in its franchises across Europe. So they're still doing, whatever level of signaling that they can do. But that's also what companies who have already suspended operations in Russia, like Starbucks and Burger King, have committed to do. In his speech to Congress Wednesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky asked Americans to stop buying products that are funding Putin's invasion of Russia. In a passionate speech, he called for all American companies to, quote, leave Russia and, quote, leave their market immediately because it's flooded with our blood.
I mean, here's one of the things that people are failing to understand. It doesn't impact the people within power, right? Like, this is not going to have any impact on them.
They're going to print out the whatever the hell they're using to pay for their war.
Right. It's going to affect your average citizen, but it's not going to affect the people in power. When you're willing to use violence to achieve your objective, there's I don't know if this is a saying exactly, but you can hold on to power for a really, really long time. And Putin has demonstrated he's willing to use whatever violence is required in order to maintain power. So there's nothing that these sanctions are really going to do to stop this. All they're really doing is hurting, the little guy in Russia.
The average person who can no longer go and get, Pizza Hut.
Right.
Or whatever.
As long as he can fund his war machine, that's basically, it's all he needs.
The most ridiculous quote I've seen here is from a politician in the United States, John Cooper. He says, quote, "It's so disappointing that Subway is spreading Ukrainian blood on their foot-long sandwiches."
Talk about an exaggeration.
More coming up here. It's Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odysee, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off. Now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odysee started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odysee. You can watch live or anytime on our Odysee channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odysee today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says a nearly 2-hour virtual conversation today with China's President Xi Jinping went well, though the White House says the president warned of consequences if China rearms Russia while the Ukraine conflict is continuing. The Chinese, in their readout of the call, indicated the onus lies on the United States to solve a crisis that they argue the US and NATO fueled. With more, FSN's Nick Harper from our Washington bureau.
Well, the two big watchwords were costs and consequences. The suggestion is that sanctions might follow if China were to side with Russia and if they were to give that military or economic help. But there is that worry that if the US were to go ahead with sanctions, it would just further drive that wedge that the White House is always speaking about between autocracy and democracy.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says more than 130 people have been pulled alive from the rubble of a theatre in the Black Sea port of Mariupol, but countless others are said to be trapped. It was attacked by the Russians, even though their pilots could clearly see painted signs warning that children were sheltering inside. President Vladimir Putin today attended a rally in Moscow marking the 8th anniversary of Russia's seizure of the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine. FSN's Giles Gibson is monitoring events in Russia from our bureau in Riga, the capital of Latvia, outside the reach of the Kremlin's reporting restrictions.
He said that Russia will accomplish all of its plans inside Ukraine and claimed that Russia is the most unified that it's been in a very long time. You had lots of Russians chanting, lots of people holding up Russian flags and waving them. But we also know, of course, that thousands of people have been detained in cities across Russia over the last couple of weeks for protesting against the invasion of Ukraine.
At the UN Security Council, Russia again accused the US of developing biological weapons in Ukraine, and the US again said that's politicized misinformation. From FSN's bureau at UN headquarters in New York, Sarah Walton with more.
The Russian ambassador to the UN said they had found documents showing the US sent $32 million to epidemiological labs in Ukraine and gave the country carte blanche to carry out dangerous biological experiments. The US released a joint statement with 4 other Security Council members to deny those claims and accuse Russia of using the UN Security Council forum to spread disinformation.
2 other headlines today. 2 young boys who got lost in the Amazon rainforest have been found alive. The 8-year-old and 6-year-old Indigenous brothers are expected to make a full recovery. And the British government is warning P&O Ferries that the company faces an unlimited fine if it's found to have breached employment laws by firing 800 workers without any consultation or warning on Thursday. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live, and you can bring up whatever's on your mind here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And I got to say, I'm not a big Subway fan or anything like that, but the story about Subway not cutting off officially their franchisees in Russia does make me want to go and get myself a Subway sandwich at some point just to show some support. Because remember, it's not the people of Russia who are invading Ukraine. It's, Vladimir Putin and his military that, of course, is under threat of violence. If you don't do what he says, I'm sure you're going to be punished and thrown in a brig or something like that, like most militaries around the world. And, of course, whether or not Putin is invading or protecting or whatever, it just depends on which propaganda you want to believe. But regardless of whatever your opinion is, the people of Russia are innocent here, like all people everywhere, unless they've specifically, signed up for the military and they want to go and kill some people in Ukraine, which the supermajority of Russians are not doing that. In fact, there are a lot of people in Russia who are against the war. Now, I did see there was footage today, apparently from some sort of rally that Putin had, kind of doing like a Trump rally, where they had a stadium full of people waving the Russian flag and that kind of thing. Of course, the counter propaganda to that propaganda was that they were the people were interviewing people that were going into this stadium, and what they claimed was that a lot of the people going into the stadium are government workers who were told you gotta go, or students who were told you're going to get a extra credit or whatever if you show up at this stadium event. A lot of them supposedly didn't even know what they were going to. So again, it's hard to really know what the truth is, even for people that are actually there on the ground, unless you really ask around and keep your mind open to discover these things. So we were learning here about Subway is they are on a list of companies, and I've got the actual list here that somebody at Yale University has been putting together. Apparently it's being updated multiple times per day, where they have a list of hundreds of companies, global corporations, and what are their statuses. There's 4 different status categories. There's withdrawal, that is to say companies that have made a clean break and are completely halting all Russian business of any sort. There's suspension, that is to say keeping their options open for return. So McDonald's, for instance, has suspended their operations in Russia. They've got 800-something locations. And from what I understand, they're actually paying their employees there, which is very unusual. I guess they're hoping that this thing's going to be over soon and that they're going to be able to flip the switch and get operating again.
The interesting one is, I believe,
Coca-Cola.
Yeah, they were in the Soviet Union back in before it became Russia.
So, really?
Yeah, it predates to Russia. So it's and I think they are. I don't think they're on that list.
They're on the list under the second category, under suspension, and then they have like a little bit of detail.
So they suspended their.
According to this, Coca-Cola has suspended certain operations in Russia.
Okay, so they are suspending, which is interesting because they were taking part. You could buy Coke in the Soviet Union,
right? So supporting the Soviets and the oppression of the Soviet people, but oh no, now they've got to get out.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's just all political.
It's
completely political. So the other 2 categories, so you've got withdrawal, you've got suspension, you've got category 3, which is scaling back. So these are companies that are scaling back some but not all operations or delaying new investments. And then the 4th category is companies that are quote unquote digging in. They're defying any demands to exit exit Russia. And
who's defying? That's really interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's how they want to paint these companies, as though they are some sort of bad corporate citizens and that they should listen to the woke left on Twitter.
Yeah,
basically. And it's actually a pretty short list here, according to this category. And I'll share this on our social site over at social.freetalklive.com so you can see it for yourself. But the digging in category, it looks like it's maybe 24 businesses, not very long. Some of them are...
Any that are name recognition?
Some are, but some of them I don't recognize at all. Ones that pop out at me, AstraZeneca, Asus, the computer manufacturer, apparently.
They're defiant.
Yep.
Interesting.
Bose, Cloudflare, Emerson Electric, Halliburton.
Interesting.
Koch Industries with a K, O-C-H. And then also SC Johnson and, of course, Subway is on that list. There's another dozen or so that I just don't jump out at me as recognizable. So if you want to weigh in here into the discussion, you can share your thoughts. The number is 603-283-6160. In other Russian crackdown-related news, we've been talking over the past few weeks, especially on Friday nights with you on, Chris, since you host Think Penguin's your company, but Freedom Decrypted is the video show and audio show that you do weekly. It's more of a tech-oriented, freedom-oriented talk program. And so we've been talking about, for instance, how Russia's been cut off by 2 of the internet backbone providers, at least as of last count. That was last week. Maybe there's been a third one by now. I don't know. But Cogent, I believe, was one of them, if I recall correctly. And then Lumen was another one. So they've been cut off. Now, that hasn't completely eliminated their internet access because there was like 5 or 6 total. So they've lost 2 out of...
Yeah, it'll slow their internet connection down. People in Russia accessing the outside world anyway.
But one of the companies on this list of companies that's not backing out of Russia is Cloudflare, and that's an internet company. They do kind of like, would you call it DDoS protection
Absolutely.
to some extent?
Yeah, that's their main thing.
And
Denial of service
the big one
protection.
is caching, which actually is interesting because basically, if they have, presumably they have servers in Russia, and well, they have to.
Yes,
that's what they
have
do.
servers in Russia.
And yeah, right, exactly. And so all of these websites that like are not accessible or would be slowed down, most of them nowadays are using Cloudflare and similar companies to cache to bring that content closer to the user, so it's actually not going to get slowed down anyway. If they were to pull out, that would probably have more of an impact, than even the internet service providers shutting down.
Well, there's a more kind of detailed story here about one of the consequences of this major corporate crackdown on the Russian people. Because remember, it's not the oligarchs and Putin's buddies that are really going to be hurt by this. But according to bleepingcomputer.com, Russia has now created its own TLS certificate authority to solve website access problems that have been piling up after sanctions are preventing certificate renewals. So this gets a little techie, but I think we can make this clear for folks. Every now and then, you'll go to a website and your browser will show an error message, and it'll say something like, this website might be insecure. Click past this, check this box and click approve or whatever, and then we'll let you see it. There's a warning that'll pop up, and it's very scary sounding when that warning pops up. But what that is telling you isn't so much that the website is per se insecure. It's just telling you that their certificate, in a lot of cases, has expired, right?
Absolutely.
And what does that mean, for the average person, that a certificate has expired? Is it something to even really be concerned with?
I mean, as a person who maintains a website, absolutely. But as somebody who is accessing that website, not necessarily. It could be a man-in-the-middle attack that's going on, so it's something that you do want to be aware of.
The thing is, this is a certificate that was previously valid.
That's true.
So unless they captured an existing certificate, then there's no reason to believe it's a man in the middle.
It depends on the specific error message. So nobody's actually talking about if you actually read the message and it's simply expired, then not an issue. But it might not necessarily just be expired. It might be compromised.
If it's registered to a different domain, if
maybe something like
the
that,
qualified name on it is wrong,
or
then
self-signed.
You might have a man in the middle.
Well, what's happening here is sanctions are apparently preventing Russian websites from renewing their existing certificates, and we'll talk about that coming up. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after Pork Fest, but Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
This is novelist Tom Robbins. When my mother was diagnosed with glaucoma, her conservative Virginia physician told her there was only one treatment that might ease her pain and save her eyesight. That treatment was medical marijuana, which he could not prescribe. I offered to get her some and teach her how to use it effectively, but my father objected because marijuana was against the law. So my mother, who loved to read and walk in nature, was condemned to grow cruelly, unnecessarily blind. Tragedies like this happen all the time, but they don't have to keep happening. To learn more about medical marijuana, call the Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or visit them on the web at mpp.org.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Yep, it's Free Talk Live, and the phones are open. If you want to join the show, you can do that here. Number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio with you tonight, you've got Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris.
We're talking about some of the consequences that are piling up on the Russian people, which, of course, is going to do nothing but make them angry. It's not going to make them happy necessarily about the people on the outside of their country. It's not going to likely make them overthrow Putin. Sanctions have always punished the average person and almost never result in an actual overthrow of the government.
Yeah, it actually inspires nationalistic pride when they do sanctions.
Well, because Putin can make it look like he's their savior. Oh, look at all these other people in the world are doing to us. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to protect my people. And so, yeah, it absolutely digs him in even further.
Mm-hmm.
So another example of what they've been doing recently here from bleepingcomputer.com is sanctions have been imposed now that are preventing Russian websites from doing something as basic as renewing their existing security certificates, TLS certificates as they're called, which causes browsers to block access to websites that have those expired certificates, or at the very least makes it difficult for the user to actually get through to the website. TLS certificates help the web browser confirm that a domain actually belongs to a verified entity and that the exchange of information between the user and the server is encrypted. Now, I think that we probably can have some critiques of the existing server certificate system because it's pretty centralized, isn't it, guys?
Yeah, it's very centralized. Getting onto the list of approved certificate authorities is not easy, and
it differs too.
So they may well be doing Russia a favor because that way Russia figures out how to generate their own certificates, and then instead of sending $20 a year to some American company for till the end of time, Russians can buy their certificates from the new Russian Certificate Authority.
But the question is, will the certificate authority be recognized by the big one or
the
whatever?
Browsers, yeah. So I mean, it's interesting to say it's centralized. Okay, so the whole certificate authority thing is like, it's a bit dated and it's not that secure, but it's what we got. And it's interesting to say
it's
centralized
set up to suck money out of people.
It is.
That's the whole point behind expiring certificates.
It is. But it does depend on the browser. So, you might have a different set of certificate authorities in your browser or application, depending on which one you use. So there may be some where it'll show some sort of warning message in Firefox, but it won't show it in Chrome. If your domain name is, or your certificate is for your domain name is from a provider that isn't recognized, by one of the browsers.
So just to be clear, it's the browsers themselves, the software that the end user is using, that determines what is and what is not a legitimate certificate authority.
Correct.
There's not another.
And the certificate authorities are the one who issue their certificates to websites.
Right. But what you're saying is there's not an authority over all the authorities.
Yeah,
They're not like a centrally.
No, basically,
it's not centralized like Facebook is centralized, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of why I was kind of weary on that, what you said just now. It's not fully centralized like you're thinking probably, but
well, I know exactly how centralized it is. If you run your own certificate authority, which I've done when I was an MIS director for a company called Masterlink, basically what you have to do is put the public key up on your web server where it's accessible by HTTP instead of HTTPS, so you don't have to get an encrypted connection to get it, and you give the URL for that to your users, and they click on it and download it, and the browser asks them if they want to install it, and they say yes, and the browser says, "Are you sure?" And they say yes, and then the browser installs it, and thereafter it trusts any certificate that has been signed with the private key that corresponds to the public key they download.
But a lot of people are going to be scared away by that process.
Yes,
right?
This is why it's not a great system. But this is if you're running your own certificate authority, right?
Which is now what Russia is talking
exactly
about
what Russia's doing.
Right, exactly. And though, assuming that the browser does not include your certificate authority in its list,
and that's going to be
ultimately, it doesn't, because when these lists came out, the certificate authority didn't exist.
So this is going to be the big question here, right? As to whether or not these browsers are going to take on this new certificate authority coming from Russia. So signing authorities...
But remember, most of these browsers are open source. So basically...
You could fork it.
A Russian hacker, I hate to say that, could easily fork it, add one certificate to the certificate chain, and release a Russianized version of the browser very easily.
Yeah, it's something to remember too, is that they have a lot of technical people. They're not incapable of, I mean, they're not that you're going to buy CPUs from Russia, but like, they have a lot of technical capabilities, right? I mean,
Are they manufacturing CPUs?
They are.
Really?
They are. They're just super expensive, and you would never buy one. I don't even know if you can get one technically, but they're way behind technologically speaking in that space. But the point is that they have the capabilities, right? They have a lot of technical capabilities, so they could set up.
China's not cutting them off or anything. So.
That's true too.
Yeah.
But probably the reason they're producing it is
security.
To be so that basically the world can't cut them off from CPUs.
And security too.
And the fact that they're doing it, I mean, that's a very sophisticated process. It's one of those cases where the amazing thing about a dancing bear is not how well it dances, but that it dances at all.
So what I don't think that they manufacture are the machines that make the processors. Those are, I think, usually sourced from Germany, especially the most sophisticated machinery.
Are the Chinese ones sourced from Germany?
Yes, everything's sourced, I believe, from Germany. The core machines that make, the fabs, all the fabs are like
Fabulous.
The companies
fabrication.
They're called fabrication. They're the companies that basically make the CPUs, but they need certain technology that's manufactured in Germany.
Gotcha.
So
wow. So the Russian state has envisioned a solution in a domestic certificate authority for independent issuing and renewal of TLS certificates. Quote, it will replace the foreign security certificate if it is revoked or expires. The Ministry of Digital Development, so it's actually the government that's going to be doing this apparently, will provide a free domestic analog. The service is provided to legal entities, site owners upon request within 5 working days. So, normally when you go to renew a certificate, it's done in, 5 minutes. This is a government agency, so it's going to take you a whole week.
If anybody, if anybody wants to understand why we're so opposed to government, this is something that should happen in a matter of minutes, and they're going to take 5 days to accomplish this. Again, private corporations, a matter of minutes. Government, 5 days. Okay. Government is not the way to do anything.
I just run CertBot. And I have my certificate within 30 seconds.
Yeah.
For new certificate authorities to be trusted by web browsers, however, they first need to be vetted by various companies, which can take a long time. Currently, the only browsers that recognize Russia's new certificate authority as trustworthy are the Russia-based Yandex browser and Atom products. So Russian users are now told to use those instead of Chrome, Firefox, Edge, etc. Had you guys ever heard of Yandex?
Absolutely. They're huge in Russia. So I believe they're actually based out of Norway. Is it Norway?
Are they open source too?
I know them for their search engine, but they have, it's like Google, right? Google has a browser, but they also have a search engine. It's that type of situation. They're
Is their
huge
search engine in English?
The Russian market.
Or does it have an English interface?
You can search in English, but it's really going to give you best results in Russian.
Well, speaking of good search engines, there, of course, was controversy recently that DuckDuckGo had been modifying their search results and favoring political results.
That was weird. So you should probably not use DuckDuckGo because the people behind it have said things that were concerning, but the actual reasons the results are being censored is because they're getting them from Bing, or i.e. Microsoft, in other words. Yeah. So, it's...
what about the Brave one? Is that the best one right now? What's the best search out there?
I'm not a huge fan of the guy behind Brave. And I don't know that I trust him, but I will say that some of the stuff in Brave is kind of cool that they've implemented. So
I like the Brave browser. I like Dogpile as a search engine because it goes to a bunch of different search engines to get its result.
If you want to join the discussion here, you can. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Coming up, a crackdown, another potential one, I guess, on cryptocurrency. And Chris has that story on the way in Hour 2. It's Free Talk Live. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says a nearly 2-hour virtual conversation today with China's President Xi Jinping went well, though the White House says the president warned of consequences if China rearms Russia while the Ukraine conflict is continuing. The Chinese, in their readout of the call, indicated the onus lies on the United States to solve a crisis that they argue the US and NATO fueled. With more, FSN's Nick Harper from our Washington bureau.
Well, the two big watchwords were costs and consequences. The suggestion is that sanctions might follow if China were to side with Russia and if they were to give that military or economic help. But there is that worry that if the US were to go ahead with sanctions, it would just further drive that wedge that the White House is always speaking about between autocracy and democracy.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says more than 130 people have been pulled alive from the rubble of a theatre in the Black Sea port of Mariupol, but countless others are said to be trapped. It was attacked by the Russians, even though their pilots could clearly see painted signs warning that children were sheltering inside. President Vladimir Putin today attended a rally in Moscow marking the 8th anniversary of Russia's seizure of the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine. FSN's Giles Gibson is monitoring events in Russia from our bureau in Riga, the capital of Latvia, outside the reach of the Kremlin's reporting restrictions.
He said that Russia will accomplish all of its plans inside Ukraine and claimed that Russia is the most unified that it's been in a very long time. You had lots of Russians chanting, lots of people holding up Russian flags and waving them. But we also know, of course, that thousands of people have been detained in cities across Russia over the last couple of weeks for protesting against the invasion of Ukraine.
At the UN Security Council, Russia again accused the US of developing biological weapons in Ukraine, and the US again said that's politicized misinformation. From FSN's bureau at UN headquarters in New York, Sarah Walton with more.
The Russian ambassador to the UN said they had found documents showing the US sent $32 million to epidemiological labs in Ukraine and gave the country carte blanche to carry out dangerous biological experiments. The US released a joint statement with 4 other Security Council members to deny those claims and accuse Russia of using the UN Security Council forum to spread disinformation.
2 other headlines today. 2 young boys who got lost in the Amazon rainforest have been found alive. The 8-year-old and 6-year-old Indigenous brothers are expected to make a full recovery. And the British government is warning P&O Ferries that the company faces an unlimited fine if it's found to have breached employment laws by firing 800 workers without any consultation or warning on Thursday. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, a message from the United States on Russia's war in Ukraine that may have got through to President Vladimir Putin. It turns out the Russian leader only follows 24 accounts on Twitter, and one of them is that of the former governor of California and action movie star Arnold Schwarzenegger. So yesterday, he distributed a video across multiple platforms, including Twitter, telling Russian forces what's really going on in Ukraine and directing a plea to the Russian leader.
To the Russian soldiers listening to this broadcast, this is not the war to defend Russia that your grandfathers or your great-grandfathers fought. This is an illegal war. Your lives, your limbs, your futures are being sacrificed for a senseless war condemned by the entire world. Let your fellow Russians know the human catastrophe that is happening in Ukraine. And to President Putin, I say, you started this war. You are leading this war. you can stop this war.
The whole thing runs around 9 minutes. It is worth every second of your time as Schwarzenegger reaches back into his own family history, explaining that his father, a Nazi soldier, never overcame the physical wounds and the shame of his service in Russia during World War II. The main news again. President Biden says a nearly 2-hour virtual conversation with China's President Xi Jinping went well, but the White House says he warned of consequences if China rearms Russia while the Ukraine conflict continues. President Zelensky says more than 130 people were pulled from the rubble of a theatre shelled by the Russians in Mariupol. Countless others are said to be trapped, and the UN is warning that food supply chains in Ukraine are collapsing. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
This is the Onion Week in Review. A month after the death of leader Kim Jong-il, North Korea's 24.5 million citizens have returned to their regular daily routines this week, holding a festive synchronized disco jump rope gala in Pyongyang's main public square. Life in the hermetic communist nation is reportedly beginning to normalize following the protracted mourning period, with citizens once again donning their brightly colored uniforms and performing intricate gymnastics routines in perfect unison.
It is an inspiring sight to see so many loyal citizens find the strength to unfurl their long silken streamers and do dozens of tandem backflips set to dance music.
Observers reported that new North Korean leader Kim Jong-un nodded once in approval of the disco jump rope gala, signaling an official transfer of power.
A recent study from the Centers for Disease Control finds that over 100 million children are being exposed to harmful levels of stupidity in their own homes. Hear the debate about secondhand ignorance on the next In the Know.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live. You can join us here.
Free Talk Live.
Absolutely anything that you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Tonight, Ian here.
Nobody.
And Chris.
So, Chris, you had a story that you wanted to share with us tonight. The cryptocurrency world has been constantly under threat by governments around the planet, and certainly the American government is no stranger to threatening peaceful people. Some of our co-hosts, including Nobody and myself, were arrested. Actually, this week was the 1-year raid-iversary, where at 6 in the morning we had our... you had your door bashed in by a bearcat, so with a battering ram, Nobody. We had our windows smashed in over here, and Arya and some other friends of ours were all raided simultaneously.
It was a window on my side. They like drove the thing through the window with this boom, and then they raised it up and backed up and like yanked the whole window frame out of the house.
Yeah, crazy stuff.
And it was hanging off their tank when I came out.
Yeah, that's like the understatement of the year. That it was crazy. I mean, there are these I'm not good with the wording, but they're like, think of a tank. Right?
Mm-hmm.
A tank. Yeah, a tank, basically. And I don't know.
It's an armored personnel carrier, and it can have a battering ram mounted to the front of it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, they literally had, I think in the one hearing, they said 56 FBI agents. 56 FBI agents. I didn't see that many here, but...
so that doesn't include the ATF and the USPS.
That didn't include any of those other people, right? And there was...
You got to be a real coward to have to go after... a couple of middle-aged priests with, 50 heavily armed men in a tank and 2 tanks maybe.
Right in the middle. They had a second one, but they couldn't bash in my door with it because there were too many cars around.
I have to say, all I was thinking that morning was, it was one of 2 things, obviously. And the one was... What did you say, Nobody?
Yeah, and you got some video that's over at thecrypto6.com for people who haven't seen that yet. You can check that out. But the reason I bring that up is because all of that was over cryptocurrency-related quote-unquote crimes, which of course have no victim, and we're planning to go to trial later this year, so that's a whole other story. But just an example of what they're doing to crypto businesses or crypto supporters. In our case, wasn't a business, but a business that is under attack is Library, LBRY.com, which we've talked a lot about here on Free Talk Live over the years. It's a decentralized protocol. It's a media sharing protocol. It's uncensorable, basically, and you should learn more about it if you haven't taken the time to do that. They are currently under attack from the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. In fact, they're in the midst of doing depositions right now. And Jeremy Kauffman, actually the head over at Library, has announced that they are fed up with playing nice with the federal government at this point. I have a story about that. I'll try to find it. I don't know if it's in front of me right now, but Chris, you had a crypto-related story as well that you wanted to share. Some new threat that they're bringing out.
You thought it couldn't get any more. I don't know if disturbing is the right word, but that might be the right word. But it's the 1990s all over again, and this time it's funny because in the 90s it was cryptocurrencies being classified as munitions, so you couldn't export cryptography.
In the 90s?
Yep.
They didn't have cryptocurrencies.
No. Not.
I mean, they had gold money.
Encryption. Crypto in the sense
PGP,
of
cryptography
encryption.
itself. Yeah.
Not specifically PGP, but encryption in general. You could not export over.
PGP was under export controls. Phil Zimmerman had all kinds of problems with the feds over that.
Yep. Wow. And they basically made it illegal to publish, encryption algorithms, more or less.
Kind of like how they went after Cody Wilson from Defense Distributed in the last decade for publishing 3D printed gun plans.
Absolutely. Same thing.
So basically what Zimmerman did, I believe, is he published the source code of PGP as a book.
Yeah, that's right.
That could be exported.
That's right, because it's the whole free speech. You have freedom of speech, and code is speech.
You used to.
Yeah, well, so that case, that never actually turned into a case, if I recall correctly. They just, I think, dropped it in the end, if my memory serves me right. Is that my memory correct?
Eventually they gave up because there was a big kerfluffle for a while, and there were guys who were making T-shirts with the Perl code for the RSA algorithms on it, and going through the airport in them.
It was a futile effort anyway.
Exactly. But they convinced them it was futile.
Yeah, it's a futile effort anyway. And it's the same thing with this situation. It's the same thing with the 3D printing.
Same old story,
guns.
different decade.
It's futile. You
same
can't,
old song and dance.
Look, even if you suppress speech to the degree that North Korea suppresses speech, right? You can still get the message into North Korea containing 3D printed files, because they're already doing it with entertainment content.
Whether or not you can actually get a 3D printer in North Korea is a whole
well, that's another story. But at least
yes,
the information, right? The speech part of it.
Somebody can shove that in a flash drive where the sun don't shine and across the border into North Korea.
Absolutely. And so, and this is the problem. And it's kind of like drugs in prison, right?
Yes.
They haven't successfully kept them out of prison. So how on earth are you going to stop somebody from, Anyway, so this story is about crypto.
They can make a lot of money trying, though.
Cryptocurrency, though, and sanctions. And the story comes from coincenter.org. And the title of the story is New Crypto Sanctions Bill Targets Publishing Code and Facilitating Transactions. So this bill would place sweeping restrictions on persons who build, operate, and use cryptocurrency networks, even if they have no knowledge or intent to help evade sanctions through though the administration's own experts have repeatedly said cryptocurrency evasion is not serious. So the administration, being the government's own experts, have repeatedly said cryptocurrency evasion is not serious. So they're basically attacking crypto because they don't like it, and it has nothing to do with punishing Russia. But Russia is the excuse.
Russia as an excuse.
Russia is the excuse.
It probably has more to do with the Canadian truckers.
And this, by the way, this is in regards to a bill, as I understand it. So it hasn't passed yet, but this is something that the Democrats apparently are putting out there, and they're trying to get passed. Senator Warren and a raft of Democrats.
It's going to be bad.
Yep, Democratic co-sponsors today introduced a bill titled the Digital Asset Sanctions Compliance Enhancement Act. Wow, that's a long one. Which would place sweeping restrictions on cryptocurrency ecosystem under the guise of bolstering sanctions against Russia for its unjustified invasion of Ukraine. She has done this despite the fact that there is no data suggesting that cryptocurrency has been used or can meaningfully be used by sanctioned parties to evade sanctions. Yeah, and this is the crazy part. If you start looking at like the GDP of Russia and comparing it against the market cap for, say, like Bitcoin, there's no way that Russia could utilize it to, in any kind of significant way, to evade sanctions, because the Bitcoin or cryptocurrency is just not big enough to sustain the amount of money or value that would be exchanged. I mean, the prices would, if you think that the prices doubling is something that
you about the price of Bitcoin?
Yeah, that happens already. Now, imagine if the demand more than doubled, right?
Russia has a GDP in 2020 of $1.48 trillion.
Yeah. So,
which is equivalent to approximately the value of the entire cryptocurrency market.
Right. So, if I would love to see Russia start utilizing cryptocurrencies to evade sanctions, just because that would be great for cryptocurrency, I think. However,
they're not going to.
And it's unfortunate, but I would love to see that, because it would expand the usage of cryptocurrencies, and that's a good thing.
It'd bring the prices up for sure. If the government went in and bought a bunch of Bitcoin.
Yes, and
normally they just steal Bitcoin, like
even
the
if
U.S.
you
government
don't
just steals
hold crypto. More people using crypto means more freedom, and the people who are actually going to get hurt the most by this are actually ordinary citizens, and people who oppose this regime too. Actually,
I want to hear more about what exactly they're proposing. So again, this is going to crack down on people in the United States who are in the world of cryptocurrency, and they're using Russia as their excuse. But what are they proposing? We'll get into some detail on this coming up here. This is Free Talk Live.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you're helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at shiresociety.com. That's shiresociety.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. And we're brought to you by Bitcoin.com. You've been hearing a lot about cryptocurrency, and maybe you've decided it's finally time to start learning about it. Well, get over to Bitcoin.com, where you can click Get Started at the top of the page, and then you can watch some introductory videos that will get you some of the basics. You'll understand things like decentralization, blockchain technology, and you don't have to get into the engineering aspects to understand just the basics of how this stuff operates. What are some of the key differences between cryptocurrency and what you, say, grew up with? So head over to Bitcoin.com and click Get Started right there at the top of the page. You can also buy cryptos over at Bitcoin.com. You know, you want to get your first Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or even some others. They've got a whole bunch that they're making available now through Bitcoin.com. Plus, there's their news site. It's available every day with fresh information from the world of cryptocurrency at news.bitcoin.com. Chris, you've got a story here tonight about the crypto world, specifically the industry in the United States, being targeted now and using sanctions against Russia or any other country for that matter, because there are still sanctions against Iran and North Korea and I think probably some still on Cuba. But what did you want to tell us about this? What was it? Venezuela. Well, yeah, they're starting to change their approach to Venezuela because now they need their oil. Biden has been cozying up with old Maduro down there in Venezuela in recent weeks.
Yeah, it's actually interesting.
I wonder why they think that it produces more carbon dioxide if oil is drilled in the United States than if it's drilled somewhere else. I don't think that's how chemistry works.
Wait, do they actually think that?
I don't know, but they seem to think it's better for the environment if we don't drill here and somebody else drills somewhere else.
I mean, I could kind of understand not wanting to pollute your own backyard, but
carbon dioxide it diffuses.
Yeah, I mean,
the local level of carbon dioxide I don't think has ever been shown to differ throughout the world.
Yeah, that's probably true. I'm thinking more like, I don't know, like oil tankers, I don't know, like crashing into things and spilling and things like that, but
yeah, the distribution of oil spills can be different.
If you got like a tourism business or something like that on the seacoast and there's an oil spill, it could damage business.
Well, they've still had oil spills in the Gulf of Mexico. So it's not
but that's because that's also because they allowed the drilling to happen out there too. So
refining.
Yeah, I thought it was
drill
drilling
there too.
Yeah, they drill in the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, it's not just refining, but Texas is big on refining too, I believe. So
anyway, what is this thing called? This bill?
I don't think using Venezuelan tankers is going to make it less likely. Oil spills.
They got major issues already in Venezuela without having the tankers crash into things.
But this crypto bill, what's it called?
Yeah, this is a good question. Digital Asset Sanctions Compliance Enhancement Act. So it's a long one.
Yeah, of course.
The White House. Okay, so the White House, Treasury, and Department of Justice have all stated that cryptocurrency is a poor tool for sanctions evasion and one that they have well under control. For example, FBI Director Christopher Wray said last Thursday that at a Senate Intelligence Committee hearing, the Russians' ability to circumvent the sanctions with cryptocurrency is probably highly overestimated on the part of maybe them and others. We are, as a community and with our partners overseas, far more effective on that than I think sometimes they appreciate. We have built up significant expertise both at the FBI and with some of our partners, and there have been some very significant seizures and other efforts that I think have exposed the vulnerability of cryptocurrency as a way to get around sanctions. You know, the humorous thing about this is that is probably true. Like, I mean, to some degree, like there have been some significant seizures of crypto.
Yeah, they seized like $3 or $4 billion worth of Bitcoin recently from the alleged hacker of an exchange.
Oh, that's right. Yep. However, it doesn't.
Did they seize it, or did he give up the keys?
They seized it. Somehow they somehow got his password and managed to get into an encrypted file on. This is what the mainstream media was claiming, at least, that he had some sort of file on the cloud which had his keys in it.
Ooh.
And they somehow got his password for that.
Guys, this is why you don't use iPhones.
Or an easy to crack password. I don't know how they got their hands on the password. That's not been made.
Keylogger
I don't
is
know.
always a good idea.
What was that?
Keylogger. Install some malware on his computer.
I don't think they needed that because it was probably like a private key that ended up getting synced with the cloud that was unencrypted or
no. Purportedly, he had some sort of an encrypted file on the cloud. And
so it was weak. It was a weak password. Then.
Might have been. Don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
They may have socially engineered him for all we know. We have no idea what they did.
Social engineering is one of the. It's funny because social engineering is one of the tools that what they usually call hackers, what people think of as hackers, are actually doing. They're social engineering. So kind of funny. Let's see here. We've built up significant expertise both at the FBI and with some of our partners, and there have been some significant seizures. So the funny part about that is that while there have been some significant seizures, that doesn't necessarily mean that your average person, that they're going to be able to seize your crypto. They're talking about going after the biggest players and spending huge amounts of resources in order to go after those that they want to make an example out of. Your average person is not going to have anything to worry about when it comes to...
Well, as long as they're treating their keys securely. I mean, for instance, if you've memorized your key, then you're pretty rock solid. If, on the other hand, you've got it written down and it's just kept
on an exchange,
well, if it's on an exchange, it's as good as gone. I mean, that's easy for them to get a hold of because the exchanges will do whatever they're told to do by the government. Right. But as far as keeping your own keys, because as they say, if it's not your keys, it's not your coins. And so you need to have your own cryptocurrency keys stored in as safe a way as you can get to them, right? Because like each person can only handle so much security. So for the average person, it's probably acceptable to keep your...
The average person lives paycheck to paycheck, so I don't think that's probably going to be too much of an issue.
No, I get what you're saying, but for the average person that has amassed a little bit of cryptocurrency that they are concerned with, whether that's a few $1,000s or tens of thousands, there are different ways to keep that secure. If you're going to be writing down a code and keeping it somewhere, if it's in your safe, it's going to keep it safe from the average criminal, but probably not from the FBI.
That's true, but the FBI generally doesn't go after small fish, as they say.
True.
The FBI, I'm trying to think what the statistic is. I think the FBI, you've got to be doing like 3 million or more or something like that. And that's actually an old statistic before they really get interested in it. And I think it also might include interstate. Well, I think their jurisdiction is interstate. So it's got to be like interstate and like over 3 million, something. I believe that's a number anyway. Again, that's an old number, but that's quite a bit for most people. Most people aren't going to be involved in, that level of I mean, generally I want to say crime, but everybody commits crimes, right? So most people aren't going to be involved in that level of criminal activity where it's going to be an issue. So.
Yep, that's true. And there's also, of course, hardware wallets, which are another layer of security for folks to consider.
Yeah, if you're on a Windows system or a Mac system, definitely get yourself a hardware wallet because it's not protected. It's not even.
Don't be on a Windows system.
Ideally, you wouldn't be, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not the government you have to worry about. It's malicious parties on the internet, cyber criminals, so to speak, malware, things like that. Yeah.
But there's more to this story, right?
Yep,
About what they're planning on doing. What exactly are these? This bill that they're putting forward now to crack down on the cryptocurrency industry in regards to sanctions. That's coming up here. More on the way on Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says a nearly 2-hour virtual conversation today with China's President Xi Jinping went well, though the White House says the president warned of consequences if China rearms Russia while the Ukraine conflict is continuing. The Chinese, in their readout of the call, indicated the onus lies on the United States to solve a crisis that they argue the US and NATO fueled. With more, FSN's Nick Harper from our Washington bureau.
Well, the two big watchwords were costs and consequences. The suggestion is that sanctions might follow if China were to side with Russia and if they were to give that military or economic help. But there is that worry that if the US were to go ahead with sanctions, it would just further drive that wedge that the White House is always speaking about between autocracy and democracy.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says more than 130 people have been pulled alive from the rubble of a theatre in the Black Sea port of Mariupol, but countless others are said to be trapped. It was attacked by the Russians, even though their pilots could clearly see painted signs warning that children were sheltering inside. President Vladimir Putin today attended a rally in Moscow marking the 8th anniversary of Russia's seizure of the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine. FSN's Giles Gibson is monitoring events in Russia from our bureau in Riga, the capital of Latvia, outside the reach of the Kremlin's reporting restrictions.
He said that Russia will accomplish all of its plans inside Ukraine and claimed that Russia is the most unified that it's been in a very long time. You had lots of Russians chanting, lots of people holding up Russian flags and waving them. But we also know, of course, that thousands of people have been detained in cities across Russia over the last couple of weeks for protesting against the invasion of Ukraine.
At the UN Security Council, Russia again accused the US of developing biological weapons in Ukraine, and the US again said that's politicized misinformation. From FSN's bureau at UN headquarters in New York, Sarah Walton with more.
The Russian ambassador to the UN said they had found documents showing the US sent $32 million to epidemiological labs in Ukraine and gave the country carte blanche to carry out dangerous biological experiments. The US released a joint statement with 4 other Security Council members to deny those claims and accuse Russia of using the UN Security Council forum to spread disinformation.
2 other headlines today. 2 young boys who got lost in the Amazon rainforest have been found alive. The 8-year-old and 6-year-old Indigenous brothers are expected to make a full recovery. And the British government is warning P&O Ferries that the company faces an unlimited fine if it's found to have breached employment laws by firing 800 workers without any consultation or warning on Thursday. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Phones are open if you want to join the show. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, you've got Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris.
Don't forget, you can join us online over at freetalklive.com. And you can enjoy the various features that we have for you there anytime you want. Once again, that is freetalklive.com. We're going to go to your calls and thoughts, and we're going to get deeper into your story, Chris, about this new proposal in Congress that could bring even heavier regulation onto the cryptocurrency world. And that, of course, is bad for anybody that values development and innovation and new technologies. So it's, of course, going to drive businesses out of the United States.
I think the main thing it's going to do is drive any kind of exchanges or any kind of, businesses that primarily deal with cryptocurrencies out.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And it will drive out the new innovators that haven't even opened shop.
Right.
They're just going to say, you know what, let's just go somewhere else.
They're already doing that. We already know people who left the United States as a result of the U.S. government, the federal government, cracking down on crypto.
So we're going to get deeper into that. But first, we got Jonathan on the line here calling us from Georgia. You're on Free Talk Live, Jonathan.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, what's on your mind?
Long-time fan. I've been listening since like 2004 or so.
Wow, thanks.
Yeah, I just joined in on Odyssey and hear you guys talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So my question is, so I have a ledger.
That's a hardware wallet. Just for our listeners that don't know all the lingo, that you've got a piece of hardware. You can stick it in a USB port on your laptop or desktop, and it allows you to store your cryptocurrency keys in a much more, I guess, fortified manner, shall we say?
Absolutely. My question is, what kind of on ramps do you all recommend as far as purchasing Bitcoin that maybe, I know I typically want to buy from a exchange that's no KYC, know your customer. So something not like Coinbase or anything like that. But I'm having trouble finding ways to actually purchase the Bitcoin without using my bank account or something like that. So on Ledger, when you try to buy, on Ledger, when you try to buy it, it takes you to MoonPay, which of course is not in America, and then my bank, tries to freeze the transaction and that kind of stuff. So.
Wow. Time to switch banks.
Well, they're all bad.
That's true.
It's hard to find a bank that wants to deal with a cryptocurrency exchange at all.
And we've talked about this so many times that they're a monopoly. The banking, it's effectively a monopoly because they're so heavily regulated.
Technically a cartel.
Yeah.
A cartel.
But they all are basically the same.
Yeah, they're all the same because they're the regulations, So
yeah, a lot of banks won't even, as soon as they find out you're sending money to a cryptocurrency exchange, will close your account if they know that that's what it is. Now, in some cases, you can get around this because the cryptocurrency exchanges won't actually have the word cryptocurrency in the name of the business that you're wiring to. So, if you're just sending a wire to an exchange and it's Payward Enterprises, then that doesn't necessarily reveal to the banker that you're buying Bitcoin, of course. But you definitely don't want to ever lie to a bank because then they'll bring you up on wire fraud charges or whatever.
You probably don't want to answer any questions of the bank.
You have to answer the questions.
Because if you answer them, it'll get used against you later in court.
That's one of the problems. But basically, you have to answer the questions. You can't go in and send a wire transfer and not answer their questions about, what's this wire for?
Yeah, that's true.
Right. But anyway, just what I would suggest is, and I can't give legal advice, obviously, but don't lie. But if you say you're doing it for investment purposes, then to me that's not a lie, right?
You know what's interesting is I do wire transfers all the time, and I don't know, most of the time I don't get asked. And
really? They don't ask you what it's for?
They don't ask, and they just assume it's to pay an invoice, and then they'll put down to pay an invoice.
Oh, interesting.
So it's really interesting. And this is
And technically, if you buy Bitcoin, you can get invoiced for that.
Yeah, which is why I'm always like, I don't know. It's like if you bring in something that looks like an invoice, they won't even ask. They'll just assume and they'll put it down.
But we're going off on a tangent here because that's what Jonathan wants to avoid. He doesn't want to go through the centralized exchanges, which of course is the easiest way, in theory, as long as the bank doesn't stand in your way or whatever. It's in theory an easy way to go through Coinbase or Gemini or Kraken or fill in the blank of which centralized exchange, Binance.us. These are some of them that make it simple and also relatively cheap. So on the other side of the equation, the more anonymous, the more individualized, the non-centralized, the peer-to-peer methods like going to local Bitcoins or local Monero or local, there's a variety of these local sites now, will connect you with other human beings who are willing to sell you Bitcoin, but they may be charging 10% or something like that, or more in some cases for service, because they have to deal with fraud constantly, and so they tend to raise their rates quite a bit in order to provide the service. Or you can go to a cryptocurrency vending machine, but again, you may be dealing with 10, 15, 20% rates in order to put cash into a machine, and there's still maybe some KYC involved.
I can tell you the best way to acquire cryptocurrency. Ask for, if you have an employer, ask for them to pay you in crypto. If you have a business, add support for accepting cryptocurrency and ask your customers to pay you in crypto.
That's a great way to get crypto for sure.
If you can't do that, check out a crypto meetup. People are selling and buying crypto in person all the time. At least in New Hampshire,
one near you.
Yeah. I would think
that may be the way to go.
Yeah. I don't know. Where are you? Are you in New Hampshire or are
Georgia?
You somewhere else? Georgia.
No, I'm in Georgia. Yeah,
Georgia.
I'm
I don't know about Georgia.
Are you in Atlanta, like a city, or just out in the boonies?
Southern part, southern coast.
Okay.
Is that a city?
I thought it was all southern.
Yeah, around that way.
So there might be a group it might be worth looking into, because I do agree with Chris. That's the easiest way to do it, as far as it's off the books. There's no, tracking per se, unless, of course, you're dealing with a federal agent or something like that by chance.
But then they're actually expending real resources on you.
Yeah, but even then, it's not illegal to buy Bitcoin from somebody, right? As long as they...
That's true.
Well, that's what you're going to find out, Ian.
Unless, of course, they tell you they're a heroin dealer, in which case you definitely want to stay away from doing any business with them, because they're setting you up for a money laundering charge in that case.
Well, you guys mentioned local Bitcoin, and I've looked at that. I'm just curious, what are the chances that some of the alphabet boys will be on there creating accounts trying to...
Well, we know they are for a fact.
They're less likely to be the sellers. The federal government gang is certainly investigating local Bitcoins, but they're more...
Isn't it local.bitcoin.com?
That's Bitcoin.com's competitor, and it's... last I saw, it wasn't very competitive.
Okay.
But no, we're talking about local Bitcoins, which is sort of the number one biggie out there.
I thought they stopped doing in-person
They did. Unfortunately,
okay.
local Bitcoins is not very local anymore.
I thought it was totally defeated the purpose of local Bitcoins. Totally defeated the purpose of the whole site.
Back in 2018, local Bitcoins went all KYC, and they got rid of the actual local ability to find local people to physically meet in real life.
What can you do with it still? You can still
buy things from online sellers.
So you'd have to go to a bank, somebody's bank, and then deposit cash.
There are sites though that are now copying what the original local Bitcoins did.
Yep.
And I have not actually looked into these sites in more than a year since I've been prohibited from going to them.
Point.
But I know they exist, and I know that at the time one of them was called Agora Market, if I recall, or no, Agora.
I thought that was the online hidden dark.
There was a dark web market that used the term Agora. This one is like, I know what it's called, Agora Desk.
Okay.
I think it might be .com, but check out, do a search for Agora Desk and you'll find them. I think they're still doing local, people in your area kind of hookups. But again, just going to a local meetup and finding the local doers in the cryptocurrency sphere is probably a good way to find somebody who might be willing to sell. Do you guys have any other input as far as, options for Jonathan?
Not really.
I feel like we've covered it pretty extensively here.
Yeah,
I appreciate it, guys.
I think, like I said, the best thing to do is, if you can, accept it, let people know, advertise it, that you accept cryptocurrency for payment for whatever whatever you do,
Heroin.
You definitely don't want to do that.
We got to cut you off now.
Thanks for the call. The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can bring up anything that you want. I'm hoping that was a joke, but even if somebody's joking about that, you still got to cut them off.
Yeah.
Because you can't tell if they're a federal agent.
That's a good example of what you should do if somebody tells you that they're in the heroin business. And they're trying to do crypto with you.
There is no such thing as attention span, according to Jerry Seinfeld, who figures that people have an infinite attention span if you are entertaining them. Hey, he's kept us from channel surfing for several decades, and now he's making more millions as a Las Vegas headliner. With money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important, especially if you're looking for work. So choose every every single word as though it was the last word the person you're speaking to will hear. Otherwise, it might be. Avoid redundancies such as added bonus, advance warning, end result, prior history, or personal belongings. And avoid cliches like the plague. Just kidding. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Free Talk Live.
They're the mafia. They function like the mafia. They think like the mafia. They hire people who think like the mafia. The only difference is they put on a front that there's something legitimate and legal and valid about all of it.
Well, there's no Don in this particular mafia. The Don is the majority of people who went out and voted and then put their new Don in place. And sometimes the Dons change and sometimes they don't. Incumbents are very difficult to unseat, and but their henchmen stay in place the whole time. It's quite a sophisticated mob operation.
It is. Well, it's the mafia that is so successful, that has so brilliantly pulled the wool over people's eyes, that they've actually gotten people to give them their children so the mafia can educate them into believing that they need the mafia.
Right. We have free indoctrination camps. Schools for you to send your kids to.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you are invited if you want to join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian Nobody and Chris joining you tonight. Phones are open, as always. You can bring up what you want. We're talking about the latest attempt by the federal gang to target cryptocurrency businesses. There's a new bill that's being put forward, and we haven't really gotten to the ugly details in this story yet, and I believe you still have those to come here, Chris.
Yeah.
So that's on the way here, and of course you can bring up whatever's on your mind. The number is 603-283-6160, and I do want to say thank you to Shooty, who is a supporter of the Free Talk Live AMPS program. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. Shooty is a silver level supporter, which means Shooty's giving at least $5 a month to AMPS, and you can do that. It's a Patreon. Just go over to amps.freetalklive.com. You can get signed up there for, again, as little as $5 a month, and you get some cool perks. You get some benefits for doing that, so we definitely appreciate it. Thank you, Shooty, and thank you to the over 70 people that have signed up now over at amps.freetalklive.com. If you like what we do here and you want us to keep doing it, and you want it to get bigger on more great radio stations all around the country, we can do that, but it does take some money to market the show. Once again, amps.freetalklive.com. We go to Sarah in New Mexico, and we'll get back into the crypto story here in a moment. Sarah, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, so who was the show, the host yesterday that I think he mentioned that he knows the men in New Hampshire in his circle. There's people that want to go out and fight for the Russians in the Russian side. And, so I know that he was going to explain the mercenary part of it, that they're finding mercenaries. So do you think they have been listening to me on the show about being a communist?
No.
That's exactly it, Sarah.
No, I know what you're referring to. You're referring to Matt. He's our regular Thursday night host. He said that he had heard that some people are going over. I don't know if he specifically meant it was New Hampshire. I think he was just saying that people in general are going to join the Ukrainian side, but some may also be going to join the Russian side. And what we learned last night was that some of those who joined the Ukrainian side are saying things are not what they seem. They're taking people's passports, tearing them up. They're forcing them to stay in the country. They're stripping their kits from them. They're stripping their guns, their ammunition from them, and making life very difficult on the people that are going over. Now, of course, there's a counter side to that saying that that's all BS and it's not true. But there really wasn't much comment regarding people joining the Russian side, so I don't know who that would be, but presumably those who are looking for some action and are willing to be told what to do by a bunch of killers.
The Chechens, I think, are fighting on both sides.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, as I understand it. And I forget why, but yeah.
So there you go, Sarah. Anything else you want to share tonight?
So, but he was saying that there's people from America. That's what he was saying, that people that he knows of from his area. So I'm just assuming there must be they're like American communists like myself that are involved with the Communist Party in America.
Well, there's no reason to assume that.
I have to ask, Sarah, are you a prank caller?
No, she's a real communist.
I'm not a prank caller, but he did mention that. But I mean, with all the propaganda, I can understand why the people would want to join the Ukrainians and want to go fight in the Ukrainian side, because it's always the Russians are demonized. So, but there are people that want to go fight on the Russian side unless they're getting offers from the Russians as mercenaries. So he didn't really talk about that. I mean, but are they Chechens that live in America? I mean, who are they? Are they former...
It could just be somebody that wants to go see some action.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this American mercenaries that you're talking of.
Well, I mean, Matt did suggest that was the case.
I don't doubt it.
I presume it's a very small minority of people that are willing to join a foreign military that would join the Russians.
Especially from the United States.
Yeah, given the propaganda. Thank you, Sarah, for the call tonight.
Well, a lot of people don't care. They're just mercenaries.
Right.
So if they're just fighting for money, I would imagine that the Russians are more able to pay than the Ukrainians.
Well, I don't know if there's actually... This is an important question, as I've seen the term used, mercenary, but I don't know if they're paying. I think these are volunteers.
Well, then they're not mercenaries.
Cases. Yeah, I personally, I wouldn't use the term mercenary from what I've seen out there. Although certainly the Ukrainian government's gotten over $100 million in cryptocurrency donations so far, so they're plus now $14 billion coming over from the taxpayers of the United States. That's another thing.
The reason they might be paying mercenaries, if they are, it might be the fact that they have experience fighting, and that's something that the Ukrainian military does not have. So, and the same thing for Russia. Russia, I mean, obviously they're going to have more experience fighting, but more actual fighters to back them up. People who've actually been involved in wars in Syria and Chechnya and some of these other countries that have had actual wars are probably useful skill sets, basically.
Yeah, if you know more about the situation, if people are actually being paid from the outside, if you want to weigh in, you're welcome to join the show here at 603-283-6160. Meanwhile, let's get back into the story here, Chris, that you were sharing with us about the mouthful of words bill that's going to be cracking down, if it passes, on the cryptocurrency industry.
Yeah.
What's going on?
So the bill would place sweeping restrictions on persons who build, operate, and use cryptocurrency networks, even if they have no knowledge or intent to help anyone evade sanctions. So basically,
people who use the networks.
Build. Let me repeat. I don't know.
Yeah,
if the
repeat
word
that for me. The
yeah,
word
actually,
use
yes. Use cryptocurrency
Just
networks.
Go ahead and read it one more time.
I'm going to read it again. The bill would place sweeping restrictions on persons who build, so the developers,
the programmers.
Yep. Operate, so the node operators.
Yep.
And use cryptocurrency networks. Use cryptocurrency networks. How that works? If I just send crypto from me to you, well, not you or nobody, but so let's some other figurative person here. How that would somehow assist in like evading sanctions, I do not know though. So let's see. Use cryptocurrency even if they have no knowledge or intent to help anyone evade sanctions. So it sounds like basically they're trying to ban cryptocurrency.
Wow.
It calls,
or the platforms or whatever, right?
At a minimum. I mean, just because you pass a law that bans it doesn't necessarily mean people won't use it. It just means that you're now a criminal. But everybody's a criminal, so it doesn't really mean much. It calls for sanctioning technologists and users merely for the act of publishing open source software. So this is the part that I'm referencing from the 90s and their banning of the export of high grade encryption, basically, to other countries, because that also was source code. So publishing open source software
and it failed because
it did.
Source code is speech,
right? Or facilitating.
Of course, people don't care about free speech much anymore.
That's true.
Yeah, it's sad, and you're right. All the censorship that's going on in the world.
But you may still be able to make that argument in front of a court successfully these days. Maybe. The public, not so much, but a judge may be able to comprehend that programming is actually free speech, which may be one of the ways that a law like this could get slapped down.
It seems so clear to us that it is speech, but with all of the degrading of our rights that have occurred over the years, it would not surprise me if they're going to say it's less protected. It's kind of like advertising. You would think advertising is speech and is protected by the First Amendment, but the courts have ruled otherwise. They can put restrictions on how you advertise or what you advertise or the communications of the advertisement. So
they're following Hitler's playbook. Take one freedom at a time, slowly.
Yep.
Anybody ever notice how there's no advertising for cigarettes anymore? It's a good example.
They outlawed that.
Yep. And the reason they can outlaw it is
the children.
Well, protect the children, right? Yeah. That's the idea. So
now in some countries, I think New Zealand is the first one to do it. They're now outlawing cigarettes for people under a certain age, and they can never get old enough to actually legally buy. So if you're like 14 right now in New Zealand, you will never be able to legally purchase cigarettes.
That's actually not correct still technically, because assuming that somebody leaves New Zealand, they're no longer in New Zealand's jurisdiction and they would be able to smoke.
I mean, as long as you're in their, that particular criminal enterprise zone.
But yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Their objective is that.
Yeah, and now apparently Denmark is considering doing the same thing. So there's other countries that are coming on board with this idea.
There's something rotten in the state of Denmark.
We're going to continue here. Hour number 3 is on the way. You got more to share about this crackdown, right? Or this potential crackdown. The Democrats proposing this law at the federal level that would restrict even users, as long as they can somehow connect a Russian to a website. Does that mean that everybody that's using a decentralized finance website, if a Russian trades on the site, does that mean everybody is
it's overly broad
liable? Yeah. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says a nearly 2-hour virtual conversation today with China's President Xi Jinping went well, though the White House says the president warned of consequences if China rearms Russia while the Ukraine conflict is continuing. The Chinese, in their readout of the call, indicated the onus lies on the United States to solve a crisis that they argue the US and NATO fueled. With more, FSN's Nick Harper from our Washington bureau.
Well, the two big watchwords were costs and consequences. The suggestion is that sanctions might follow if China were to side with Russia and if they were to give that military or economic help. But there is that worry that if the US were to go ahead with sanctions, it would just further drive that wedge that the White House is always speaking about between autocracy and democracy.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says more than 130 people have been pulled alive from the rubble of a theatre in the Black Sea port of Mariupol, but countless others are said to be trapped. It was attacked by the Russians, even though their pilots could clearly see painted signs warning that children were sheltering inside. President Vladimir Putin today attended a rally in Moscow marking the 8th anniversary of Russia's seizure of the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine. FSN's Giles Gibson is monitoring events in Russia from our bureau in Riga, the capital of Latvia, outside the reach of the Kremlin's reporting restrictions.
He said that Russia will accomplish all of its plans inside Ukraine and claimed that Russia is the most unified that it's been in a very long time. You had lots of Russians chanting, lots of people holding up Russian flags and waving them. But we also know, of course, that thousands of people have been detained in cities across Russia over the last couple of weeks for protesting against the invasion of Ukraine.
At the UN Security Council, Russia again accused the US of developing biological weapons in Ukraine, and the US again said that's politicized misinformation. From FSN's bureau at UN headquarters in New York, Sarah Walton with more.
The Russian ambassador to the UN said they had found documents showing the US sent $32 million to epidemiological labs in Ukraine and gave the country carte blanche to carry out dangerous biological experiments. The US released a joint statement with 4 other Security Council members to deny those claims and accuse Russia of using the UN Security Council forum to spread disinformation.
2 other headlines today. 2 young boys who got lost in the Amazon rainforest have been found alive. The 8-year-old and 6-year-old Indigenous brothers are expected to make a full recovery. And the British government is warning P&O Ferries that the company faces an unlimited fine if it's found to have breached employment laws by firing 800 workers without any consultation or warning on Thursday. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, a message from the United States on Russia's war in Ukraine that may have got through to President Vladimir Putin. It turns out the Russian leader only follows 24 accounts on Twitter, and one of them is that of the former governor of California and action movie star Arnold Schwarzenegger. So yesterday, he distributed a video across multiple platforms, including Twitter, telling Russian forces what's really going on in Ukraine and directing a plea to the Russian leader.
To the Russian soldiers listening to this broadcast, this is not the war to defend Russia that your grandfathers or your great-grandfathers fought. This is an illegal war. Your lives, your limbs, your futures are being sacrificed for a senseless war condemned by the entire world. Let your fellow Russians know the human catastrophe that is happening in Ukraine. And to President Putin, I say, you started this war. You're leading this war. You can stop this war.
The whole thing runs around 9 minutes. It is worth every second of your time as Schwarzenegger reaches back into his own family history, explaining that his father, a Nazi soldier, never overcame the physical wounds and the shame of his service in Russia during World War II. The main news again, President Biden says a nearly 2-hour virtual conversation with China's President Xi Jinping went well, but the White House says he warned of consequences if China rearms Russia while the Ukraine conflict continues. President Zelensky says more than 130 people were pulled from the rubble of a theatre shelled by the Russians in Mariupol. Countless others are said to be trapped, and the UN is warning that food supply chains in Ukraine are collapsing. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Last month, the FDA approved Hallucex, a new class of weight loss drug that helps users avoid overeating by producing nightmarish hallucinations whenever food is around. Hallucex targets the brain's cerebral cortex, stimulating the centers responsible for fear and visual processing. Test subjects reported an unprecedented decrease in appetite and showed dramatic weight loss, with only 18% reporting night terrors or subsequent cardiac arrest.
It's designed to make fatty and sugary foods even scarier. An apple just looks like it has fangs, but a milkshake will threaten you and your family by name.
Earlier incarnations of the drug proved to be too powerful and produced mental states in which test subjects no longer believed that food had ever existed. An unshakable belief that the subject had to eat all of the food on the planet in order to prevent food from rising up and destroying the human race.
You don't understand. I have to do this.
Or the conviction that food could be negotiated with diplomatically. With the Lab Report, I'm Aisha Patel.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live. It's Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the third hour of the program. Phones are open. If you want to join the show, the number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you here tonight is Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris.
And we're going to go back to your phone calls and thoughts. But coming up, Chris, you've got more to say on just what exactly they are talking about doing to the cryptocurrency world, targeting even not only programmers, but also the users of cryptocurrency or exchanges or online platforms or something, if they can claim that somehow some Russian person got around a sanction because of it. And so we'll talk more about that coming up here in moments. But first, we're going to go to your phone calls and thoughts. We got Bradley on the line calling us from Michigan. And Bradley, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. So Bitcoin is our single, well, not just Bitcoin, but cryptocurrency in general is our single best shot at achieving a truly free society. But on top of that, it's benefited my life a lot. I've and it's actually because of you guys. Years ago, you guys started talking about Bitcoin, and I was interested, so I invested in it and made quite a bit of money.
Wow, nice. It's always nice to hear that that's the case. Although I will quibble with your claim that it's the best chance for a free society. It is a tool that free people can use to, as you say, you've increased your wealth dramatically, and obviously if freedom-loving people have more wealth, then that's going to help us move things forward. But we still have to do more than just buy Bitcoin, right? Like Bitcoin's just a thing that you can use to advance freedom, but if you don't have a movement of freedom lovers, then just being alone in a completely Nazified state with all your Bitcoin isn't going to do jack diddly.
Yeah, there's potentially other solutions that also can further freedom, even if crypto didn't exist. So I think the number one thing is moving to New Hampshire for freedom is the concentrating
activism in one geographic area. Of course, New Hampshire is the best bet, and we've got so many crypto users here. We've got the concentration of libertarian activists and crypto fanatics. And so all of that creates a nice synergy that is just, you can't duplicate it.
Yeah, if you actually want to spend and use crypto, there's no better place to live.
Is this the Bradley that I met at PorkFest?
Yes, it is.
Hey, groovy. Good to talk to you, bro.
But what did you want to share about it, Bradley? Go ahead.
Well, so I started working for Students for Liberty, and they actually offer their employees the chance to get paid in Bitcoin.
Oh, wow. Nice.
But,
great.
Yeah, the CEO, Wolf, Dr. Wolf on Lair, he's very passionate about Bitcoin, and he's actually going to be speaking on it at our first all-Canadian regional conference tomorrow, actually. So I just wanted to, promote the event a little bit. He will be talking at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. I don't have a very good link to go to.
Are you allowed to have events in Canada right now? You said this is all Canadian?
Well, yeah, they have, I don't know all the details, but they have numerous local events, but it's all connected over Zoom.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that you could even meet somebody in person in Canada legally these days, like a conference or something. Although I guess they did roll back some of their restrictions during the trucker protest.
It probably depends on the region, too. But
gotcha.
Yeah, if you guys just go to studentsforliberty.org, and then they have a tab, I believe it's the programs tab. It takes you to, all the conferences it offers, and the Canadian one. Sign up for that, and if anybody's interested in learning about Bitcoin, that would be a good way to start.
Very cool. And of course, the best thing for Canadian crypto and freedom lovers to do is, of course, migrate to New Hampshire and find somebody to marry.
Yeah, right.
So they can stay here.
I'm actually surprised at how many people from outside the U.S. have moved to New Hampshire.
And successfully, too.
For the Freedom Free State Project.
What did you just say there, Bradley?
Oh, I said I'll be coming to New Hampshire soon.
Nice. Can't wait to have you. So you were at
forward to
PorkFest this year. Was it a good time, or last year?
No, it was actually a few years ago. It was, 2016?
Oh, wow. Right on.
Well, that was a good year, too.
Excellent.
2015 maybe, but...
Well, congratulations in advance on your move, and hopefully a lot of the Students for Liberty will catch on to this. I don't know how widespread New Hampshire is amongst the Liberty circles in Students for Liberty, but of course students are perfectly stationed to make the move, because after you finish school, you're like, all right, what do I do with my life now? It's a good opportunity to pick up and move somewhere new, so it's a great opportunity to come to New Hampshire.
Isn't that how Bonnie got here?
She was with Young Americans for Liberty, which I guess isn't related directly, but sounds really similar to students. I guess you don't have to be a student to be involved in Young Americans for Liberty. I presume that's the difference. Bradley, anything else you want to share tonight?
Nope, that's it. Thank you guys for what you do, and keep doing it.
Thanks for the call tonight.
Thanks,
appreciate
Bradley.
it. Let's talk to Stephen. He's in Georgia, North Georgia. You're on Free Talk Live, Stephen.
Hey, guys. I wanted to clarify some of this stuff about mercenary work in Ukraine right now.
Yeah.
So, first and foremost, unfortunately, I've done what is formerly called private military contracting. Mm-hmm. And so there's a few things you have to understand about being a mercenary, if that's the word you want to use. First of all, if you're a mercenary, you're committing an international crime.
Really?
Yeah. So the Geneva Convention outlaws being a mercenary. Now, they define mercenary as somebody that's privately paid, essentially through what we would call the DOD. So the way that you become a private military contractor is you work for a company that's subcontracted through the Department of State.
Like Blackwater.
Right, that's what was going to be my question. Are those companies not mercenaries? They're just contractors, and therefore they're not mercenaries?
So, and here's where contracting work gets weird. It has, as the title says, it's contract-based, right? So you sign up for 30 days, and when you sign up, you typically, if you're, Blackwater doesn't exist, well, Blackwater's not the name of it anymore. It's now Z or Academy or something.
Right.
When you sign the document, you typically sign it in North Carolina, and when you sign it in North Carolina, you know exactly where you're going, and you know exactly what the job is. And so, like, the last time I signed a document, I essentially said, I am protecting a hospital. And anything done to this hospital, I can take, quote-unquote, appropriate action. I can sue people. And all of that is outlined in your document or in your contract. And those are typically very short, like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. I don't know anybody off the rip that's ever gotten a year contract. I do know 2 people that got year contracts, but they had already, like, done 2 or 3 years worth of work.
So you're saying that's different than somebody who just says, all right, I'm a mercenary, I'll go wherever you want, you know, you can tell me what to do day by day because you've got a specific task. Okay, interesting.
Exactly.
It's like security, private security.
So NATO, a NATO country, when you sign that document, you're only allowed to, quote unquote, defend things. So there's a really famous contractor. His name is Ben Thomas, also known as Mookie, right? If you type Mookie and you're going to get all this stuff. He got kicked out of the SEAL teams, became a famous contractor. He actually has committed several war crimes because he would chase people down and shoot them. And under NATO guidelines, you can't do that. You can't chase them. You can't hunt them. You can't let them get to their house and then kill their entire family. Did you hear that, Mookie? You can't do that.
So I see what you're saying here, Stephen. So you're also saying that, therefore, anyone that's going over to Ukraine to work for their military is volunteering. They're not a mercenary then.
Well, here's the weird thing that I'm seeing, because I did look at the document. I do know a few guys that are going. James Yeager says he's going.
Hold that thought. If you got more you want to share on the topic, I'm happy to hear about it. The number here, if you want to join us, is 603-283-6160. Sounds like he's got some experience in this particular area in being in international conflict. So we'll get more from Stephen here in moments. The number is 603-283-6160. Plus, we'll get also more about what's going on with the latest targeting of the cryptocurrency industry in the United States, because we haven't really gotten into the meat, I don't think, of that story. That's all coming up here tonight. Of course, your calls and thoughts are also welcome. The number is 603-283-6160. You can take control of the airwaves here on Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real life. Go ahead and have a watch, and if it's been a while, have another look. I guarantee you'll notice things now that you didn't notice before. And the best part is that you're going to walk away feeling a renewed sense of your own power. You are the master of your destiny, and you will be free in your lifetime. Victimless Crime Spree.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
There are basically 2 types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio is great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live, open phones. If you want to join the show, you can. The number, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You're looking for an excuse to take a look closely at New Hampshire. You got to come on up. And now you can come up anytime. There's always something happening every single week. There are multiple freedom-oriented events happening across New Hampshire. Whether you want to go and visit Manchester, Keene, the Seacoast, or maybe even the North Country, there's a lot of stuff happening here in New Hampshire. You can go to the Free State Project's website. Of course, they've got a calendar there. There's also the Porcupine Freedom Festival and Fork Fest coming up this summer. So one of the best times to attend is when there's already thousands of people who are also coming up. And when I say thousands, I'm not exaggerating. The Free State Project's Porcupine Freedom Festival sold out last year, and their maximum number of tickets was 2,500. It's the largest liberty-oriented event, as far as I know, on the planet at this point. I believe with 2,500 attendees, they're actually outdoing Freedom Fest, which previously, I believe, held the record for largest, at least in the United States, the largest event. And Acapulco was probably close to that at one point, but I don't think they've got the attendance for that these days. But check out the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Details are over at porcfest.com, porcfest.com. That one's happening the week before Fork Fest, and Fork Fest is June 27th through July 3rd. Now, Forkfest is different from the Porcupine Freedom Festival because Forkfest is decentralized, and that means that there is no one who is in charge at Forkfest. That means there's no centralized committee deciding what's going on, and that means that it's a little more laid back, and there's also not as many people that attend. So if you want a more laid back kind of after party in the woods, the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire, you want to come on up to Rogers Campground, and all you need, because there's no tickets for Forkfest, all you need to join the fun is to reserve your camping site, RV site, or your motel room with Rogers Campground from June 27th through July 3rd. Then there's also, by the way, ways to get in touch with Forkfest attendees. There's a Matrix chat. There's a Telegram chat. They're actually linked together. And there's some other social media aspects out there. I believe there's an email list, if I recall correctly. Chris, I think you handle that. Over at forkfest.party is where you can find links to all of those things. It's an unofficial website because everything is unofficial because there's no one in charge over at Forkfest. Forkfest.party is where you can learn more. And again, it's June 27th through July 3rd. We will look forward to seeing you there. Free Talk Live expecting to broadcast from both the Porcupine Freedom Festival and Forkfest. So we go back to Stephen in North Georgia.
No.
Stephen, you all right there?
I am. How are y'all?
All right, good. You were just telling us about mercenaries and why it is they're prohibited by international law. I had asked you about those people who are going over to Ukraine. Are they volunteers? And you had started to you had begun answering that question, I think, and we had to cut you off there.
Yeah. So the stuff in Ukraine is weird because I've reached out to some of my former colleagues to see what's going on. And apparently it's falling into two categories. One, there's a lot of work in the European theater in that area, not in Ukraine, Poland, other areas, where they're doing regular PMC work. They're signing contracts. They're going for very short periods of time. They're coming back. They're making very good money. So the heyday of PMC work was like 2004.
Private military contractor. That's PMC.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And I was still in middle school, elementary school, but in 2004 you could make $3,000 to $5,000 a day. When I got in, it was there were still guys pulling in 3 to 5. But like most of us were pulling in about $1,000 a day, which is still incredibly good money, right? Mm-hmm. You're paying for your own gear, so you've got to buy all that.
Yep.
And
typical contractor, right? Like
typical
your contractor.
Right.
Right.
But then there's this really weird group of guys, and I don't understand why they would do it. But James Yeager recently announced that he's doing this. You can fill out a document to the Minister of Defense for Ukraine, and the way it looks to me is you're essentially enlisting, which would explain a lot of what y'all are talking about, where you get over there and they take your stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Because it is highly, highly, highly illegal to be a citizen of one country and work for the military of another country.
Really?
It violates all. Yeah.
Why wouldn't they just give you citizenship?
They could, and maybe that's what the tearing up of passports is. But I'm not sure how quickly they can do that. That's the deal with the French Foreign Legion, right? The French Foreign Legion supposedly, and they're a super secret organization, but supposedly you relinquish citizenship for a period of time. But once again, they're secretive. I've never looked at.
That's interesting, yeah, because I've certainly heard of them, and in theory, the Foreign Legion takes people from all over the world, right?
Yeah, well, they do, and I've met some of them, and I've asked some questions, and they were just like, "Yeah, we don't talk about that." I'm like, "Oh, that's weird."
So, okay, so I've learned a couple things here from this. It's very interesting that you're saying international law prohibits mercenaries, but it also prohibits people from joining foreign militaries as long as they have a citizenship in another country?
Yep. Like, wow. I could join the Canadian military, but when I joined the Canadian military, you become a Canadian citizen. And in the Navy, when I was in boot camp in the Navy, there was a guy in my division who was a Mexican, And before he graduated, before he finished boot camp, he was an American citizen, and that was part of the deal with him, is that he got American citizenship through boot camp.
I thought, it's interesting you should say that, because I thought that there was, you had to complete military service in order to get citizenship if you were.
That's what he said. You had to get through boot camp, and then you became an American, basically.
I thought
Well, that's not the end of your
that's
service.
not the end of the service.
Completing boot camp is the beginning.
Right.
Oh, what didn't you say was just boot camp, Stephen, or no?
No, yeah. In the process of boot camp, around week 5, they would begin the process, and then about week 7, which is really close to the end, they would become citizens.
Mm-hmm.
So even before they completed their military service.
Correct,
Yeah.
because they couldn't deploy. What he's saying is if you're not an American citizen, then it's a violation of international law.
right.
So they can have you at boot camp because you're not, deployed in that case.
That just seems that sounds so weird, because I've heard of people who have had issues with citizenship post getting out of the military. They were promised citizenship, but they didn't get it. And
well, a lot of people get promised a lot of things when they join the military and don't get them. Do you know when these laws were passed? Because I know my uncle fought with the British Air Force during World War II, or no, he was in the Canadian Air Force fighting in Britain before the United States entered World War II, and then when the United States entered, he got moved over to the U.S. military. So are these recent laws?
Was he a U.S. troop that was sort of exchanged?
No, I don't think he was in the military. I think he started out in the Canadian military because he really felt strongly about fighting Hitler, and then when the U.S. got into it, he joined the American military.
Huh. Well, we'll see if he knows the answer to the question here in moments. The number 603-283-6160. And, of course, the phones here are open. Maybe you want to weigh in because, maybe Steven's wrong. It's certainly possible that he doesn't, have all the info. It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. President Biden says a nearly 2-hour virtual conversation today with China's President Xi Jinping went well, though the White House says the president warned of consequences if China rearms Russia while the Ukraine conflict is continuing. The Chinese, in their readout of the call, indicated the onus lies on the United States to solve a crisis that they argue the US and NATO fueled. With more, FSN's Nick Harper from our Washington bureau.
Well, the two big watchwords were costs and consequences. The suggestion is that sanctions might follow if China were to side with Russia and if they were to give that military or economic help. But there is that worry that if the US were to go ahead with sanctions, it would just further drive that wedge that the White House is always speaking about between autocracy and democracy.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says more than 130 people have been pulled alive from the rubble of a theatre in the Black Sea port of Mariupol, but countless others are said to be trapped. It was attacked by the Russians, even though their pilots could clearly see painted signs warning that children were sheltering inside. President Vladimir Putin today attended a rally in Moscow marking the 8th anniversary of Russia's seizure of the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine. FSN's Giles Gibson is monitoring events in Russia from our bureau in Riga, the capital of Latvia, outside the reach of the Kremlin's reporting restrictions.
He said that Russia will accomplish all of its plans inside Ukraine and claimed that Russia is the most unified that it's been in a very long time. You had lots of Russians chanting, lots of people holding up Russian flags and waving them. But we also know, of course, that thousands of people have been detained in cities across Russia over the last couple of weeks for protesting against the invasion of Ukraine.
At the UN Security Council, Russia again accused the US of developing biological weapons in Ukraine, and the US again said that's politicized misinformation. From FSN's bureau at UN headquarters in New York, Sarah Walton with more.
The Russian ambassador to the UN said they had found documents showing the US sent $32 million to epidemiological labs in Ukraine and gave the country carte blanche to carry out dangerous biological experiments. The US released a joint statement with 4 other Security Council members to deny those claims and accuse Russia of using the UN Security Council forum to spread disinformation.
2 other headlines today. 2 young boys who got lost in the Amazon rainforest have been found alive. The 8-year-old and 6-year-old Indigenous brothers are expected to make a full recovery. And the British government is warning P&O Ferries that the company faces an unlimited fine if it's found to have breached employment laws by firing 800 workers without any consultation or warning on Thursday. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, you can join the show here. Phones are open at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, you've got Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris.
Don't forget, you can join us online anytime you want. Head over to freetalklive.com. And we do have archives that go back for years. You can just go and easily acquire those over at freetalklive.com. You can also subscribe to our podcast feeds. The RSS feeds are available for you over at feeds.freetalklive.com. Just take whichever feed you want. There's a few different ones that are there. The full feed's got everything that we make available. There's the digest-only feed and the full shows-only feed over there at feeds.freetalklive.com. Just drop them in your favorite podcast client, and you will receive the latest episodes of Free Talk Live as they're happening. We're talking with Stephen in Georgia. He is explaining to us the legalities of being a mercenary, which apparently you just can't do, at least as far as joining some other fighting force, some other governmental fighting agency around the planet, because international law has made that illegal. And also, not only that, you can't even volunteer. So not as a mercenary, but just as a volunteer. He says you can't even volunteer for another military unless you're a citizen of that country, and some will give you citizenship in return for volunteering. But nobody, you'd ask Stephen the question of when did this get put into place, because you said was it your grandfather? Nobody?
My uncle.
Your uncle. So not too long ago, Korea, was he fighting Korea?
No, beginning of World War II.
World War II, okay. And so he was able to fight for the Canadian government at the time?
Yeah.
So when was this put into place, Stephen? You said you knew the answer.
Yeah, so give a little quick history real quick, because mercenary work has drastically changed. So World War II, there's this idea that Pearl Harbor got hit and then we turned all of our factories into war machines. Not exactly true. Prior to us getting involved in World War II, we were producing a lot of planes, like lots and lots and lots and lots of planes, like way more planes than we'd ever need. And what was happening is we were giving American trained pilots these planes. We were renting them out for pennies on the dollar. We were allowing them to go over there, and we were letting them fight on behalf of friendly nations. When you see an aircraft with the tiger mouth, like the tiger teeth, that's what that is. They're American-owned planes that are being rented out by Americans to go fight wars on behalf of our allies. And that is the exact reason that at the end of World War II, the Germans were like, this has to come to an end. Like, they were devastating, because essentially what was happening is you had my favorite word, decentralized military that was getting a lot of leeway, and they were attacking the junk out of stuff. The Red Wings, that movie about the black guys that became pilots, what a lot of people don't know is they didn't become officers until well into the war. They were essentially contractors. They were back then called mercenaries, but at the end of World War II, they said, hey, this stuff has to stop. Well, Vietnam, Korea rolls around, and there's a need for there's a need for experience, essentially. So they create this branch in the military, or they create wings in each branch of the military that allow them to have some leeway, but that doesn't work. So Vietnam comes around, and the CIA kind of holds the keys to the kingdom when it comes to PMC work, which was very, very lucrative back then. Desert Storms rolls around. It was too short to get a lot of PMC work involved. 2000 hits, 2001 hits, the towers fall, and then all of a sudden we need everybody on the ground doing everything. And here's where things get really tricky. You're involved in what's called the Global War on Terror, which didn't end a couple months back when we left Afghanistan. Did not end.
Of course not.
But it takes a lot of paperwork and a lot of formalization to get guys into war zones. And it takes a lot of paperwork to get U.S. military troops into war zones. So the way they do this is the Secretary of State says, hey, which one of you multi-billion-dollar companies wants to employ guys to carry guns in this area on behalf of the State Department? And that's how they get through that loophole, is it's through the State Department. They don't call them mercenaries, they call them private military contractors.
Okay, but I missed the answer to the question if you answered it. Nobody had asked you when
Well, he said that at the end of World War II, the Germans apparently were very upset because these guys, these Americans who were fighting with the British and the Canadians.
Well, why would anyone would have cared what the
effective.
loser of World War II wanted in that case?
Yeah, I wondered that too. Why would they? Why would
they
they
have no
care?
sway? Are you saying that's?
It was.
Go ahead.
It was the Germans were very vocal about it, but also the Russians were vocal about it. The Chinese were vocal about it. The Japanese were vocal about it. Because here's the deal: if you're in the military, you obey the orders of those appointed over you. If you're an officer, then you have to agree to not do certain things and not order certain things. But if you're what we call now a PMC guy, or back in the day, a mercenary, you were in a lot of ways commission-based. So you want the big dollars, you go after the big targets. And in Nazi Germany, there was a lot of inside mercenary work. Germans were attacking the German military in isolated circumstances, but they were doing it in big ways. They were doing it in real big ways because they were getting that big money.
Interesting. Okay, so you're saying that the restrictions on mercenaries being able to be used internationally by governments were put in place after World War II.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And everybody's got to work through. We do it through the State Department. I'm sure Russia has something. I'm sure Ukraine's got something. But every country does it. They just call it something else, and they don't allow it to go through their Ministry of Defense or the Department of Defense or whatever, their Ministry of Peace.
So then presumably the Ukrainians...
Ministry of Peace.
So presumably then the Ukrainians are perhaps giving these people citizenship in order to bring them into their military, those people who are coming over there to fight on their side?
It is, and I know a guy that's over there right now, and apparently there is a lot of dissension. We were talking about it because he went over there with, $15,000, $20,000 in stuff. And they were just like, we're going to use that as a group now. And he's like, no, these are my personally owned night vision goggles. These are $4,000.
Now they belong to the state.
Yeah.
He got nationalized.
Yeah.
And from what he has said, he's essentially taking orders, which violates international law because he's supposed to be under a contract to do a particular task in a particular region for a particular purpose for a particular point in time. It's all contracted out. If he violates his contract, he becomes a war criminal. Like I don't.
But
like,
who on the international scene is going to accuse Ukraine of violating international law, except for Russia or China
Russia,
or something?
China, anybody with half a brain.
But they're basically protected. I mean, essentially, Ukraine, if they violate international law, can get away with it because they have the backing of the United States and Europe.
Well, so here's where it gets tricky, okay? Historically speaking, if you want to make your country look good and people are doing dumb stuff and they're violating international law, you never send your officers before international courts. You can sometimes send your enlisted guys into international courts, but it really behooves you if you're gonna try to make yourself, you're gonna try to virtue signal. It really behooves yourself to go, oh, well, what happened was we gave this contract out to the State Department under the guise of the president, and then the individual who had the contract violated.
Okay.
So they throw the contractor under the bus.
Right. Thanks, Stephen, for the call. Thanks for the inside info. Definitely appreciate it. Answered all the questions.
And if you didn't know, governments will steal your stuff. Don't let them do that.
Yeah, don't trust them. Definitely don't volunteer your services to them. You cannot trust these people. They'll get you killed, too. More coming up here. It's Free Talk Live. Thanks, Stephen. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, phones open. If you want to join the show here, you can. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you tonight, it's Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris.
Join us online anytime over at freetalklive.com and enjoy the features that we have there. And I'm happy to announce that as of this week, actually as of yesterday, we have now changed the cam feed over at cam.freetalklive.com for the few people that might have actually ever watched us through our website. Because there's, we're on all these different streaming sites. You can obviously go to video.freetalklive.com or watch.freetalklive.com. That'll take you to our Odyssey stream. But we now have the ability, thanks to Odyssey, who've now made it possible to embed our live stream into our website. It wasn't possible until 2 days ago. So they sent me an email to let me know, because I was asking them for it as a feature. And one of the things I got to say about Odyssey is every single time I've asked them for a feature, they've implemented it. So that's amazing level of customer service. They're a great organization that actually cares about freedom of speech. They're like the one place on the internet now that you can actually see RT's content, for instance. They haven't been thrown off like they have from YouTube and everywhere else. So really love Odyssey, really love what they're doing over there. And now if you're on freetalklive.com and you're watching us there, you are no longer seeing our Twitch feed, which means you get an advertisement from Twitch. That's gone. Now you're just watching the pure Odyssey feed straight over at cam.freetalklive.com. So just an FYI, if you're not yet subscribed to us on Odyssey, get on over to video.freetalklive.com. That takes you right over to our Odyssey channel, and you can follow us there. We really would appreciate it. So, Chris, let's get back into the story that you brought in tonight about this new piece of legislation that is threatening not just programmers, that would be bad enough, but threatening users of something crypto, a platform, a crypto itself. We're not real clear on what.
It's the potential for sanctions on software developers, node operators, and miners at a minimum. So, Section 3 of
miners, you say?
Yep.
Okay, but also users, I think was said
They
earlier.
said users.
Yeah, okay.
Section 3 of the bill goes beyond merely calling for secondary sanctions on non-compliant foreign cryptocurrency exchanges. And it additionally calls for sanctions on anyone who significantly and materially sponsored, don't sponsor a crypto exchange or an event or something like that, or provide financial, material, or technological support for goods or services. I guess don't provide support for it either, like end user support, to or in support of any sanctioned person. Let's look at each of these in turn. Exchanges. Placing sanctions on non-compliant overseas cryptocurrency exchanges is at least a calibrated response. Treasury officials have repeatedly identified non-compliant overseas cryptocurrency exchanges as the most meaningful remaining gap in effective AML CFT controls.
AML stands for anti-money laundering. I don't know what CFT stands for.
I'm not sure what that is either. I'm not sure. I feel like it's on the tip of my tongue, but and have suggested that this, rather than unwarranted.
I got it. Combating the financing of terrorism. I had to look it up, but that's what CFT stands for. Yep.
Oh, that's not what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Rather than unwarranted.
I think it's actually stands for cartel for trust fund baby.
Yeah. Rather than unwarranted alarm over so-called decentralized exchanges or unhosted wallets, should be priority for the policymakers. Nonetheless, the president already has the authority necessary to create the secondary sanctions on exchanges, regardless of this proposed legislation.
Now, what is a secondary sanction? It sounds like they're targeting exchanges that are not U.S. based.
Yep.
They're saying there's international exchanges that are quote unquote non-compliant, meaning international exchange is like, well, I don't have to follow your sanctions,
Right.
United
They're
States.
trying to enforce U.S. law on people that aren't operating within U.S. jurisdiction.
Yeah, and so they're
what
saying,
are we going to do tonight, Brain? Same thing we do every night. Try to take over the world.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me like, and I'm just guessing here. They're saying secondary sanctions. So the primary sanctions are the ones on the certain Russian oligarchs, Putin, his buddies, right, or the Russian banks in certain cases. Those are the people who've been sanctioned so far. A secondary sanction would be against presumably the operators of these non-compliant exchanges. So if you're, let's just say Binance is one of them. I'm not saying they are, but Binance is one of the biggest exchanges on the planet. But they're not based in the United States. They do have a U.S. division, but anyway, let's just say it's Binance. What I would presume the secondary sanction would mean, like the Binance CEO would then be targeted by sanctions, meaning he wouldn't be able to come to the United States. He'd be arrested or whatever that would mean.
Yep, that's what it sounds like to me.
That was actually one of the major things that China and Russia cited in the joint statement they made about 3 weeks before the invasion of the Ukraine, when they reaffirmed their friendship and their desire to escape U.S. hegemony, was that the U.S. will just randomly enforce its laws outside its borders where it has absolutely no authority.
Yeah. There are an uncountable number of persons who can be said to provide material, technical support, or open source software. I really love that one.
Wow.
Open source software. I mean, they were literally talking about speech. Goods to power cryptocurrency networks that are overwhelmingly used for entirely legal activities, like the internet and its protocols. However, these tools, once public, can be used by anyone, and some users of those tools may be illicit. Right? This is like outlawing a web browser because you can access sites that contain illegal materials. It's insane.
Literally, considering that the internet is necessary for any cryptocurrency to work, if you're going to sanction anybody who works on cryptocurrency, you might as well sanction anybody who works for an ISP or works for an internet backbone site.
We don't have enough time to cover the whole article here, but this bill is so overly broad, it could potentially include internet service providers like your ISP. That's how broad the language of this bill is right now. So that's crazy.
Okay.
I mean, it's basically...
Well, the good news is, if you've paid off a lot of politicians, or you're rich, or you're a banker, you know they won't use it against you. They'll just use it against the little people.
Yep.
Further, the definition of digital asset transaction facilitator makes clear that the intent is to direct the president to target all manner of innocent persons in the cryptocurrency space, including persons in the business of affecting transactions via a communication protocol. This is that overly broad wording. Or one of many. Communication protocol. I mean, that's literally like TCP/IP potentially. Language, which we must point out, is strangely similar to language in use or in the current overbroad and constitutionally suspect SEC rulemaking on exchanges. Right? I don't know if you guys remember that, but the SEC has had some rulemaking stuff they released a while ago.
No, I don't know.
Well, yeah, they did, and it was basically like there was advice on like what they interpreted the law or the rules to be, and it was contradictory, and it just kind of
surprise.
Yeah, it was. It actually created more questions than answers, because they would give you like an example that contradicts what they said in what the rule was. So it
reminds me of something Ayn Rand wrote, where she said, government has no power to control free men. The only power it has is to crack down on criminals. So if your society doesn't produce enough criminals to give you the level of power that you want, you make everyone a criminal by passing so many laws that you can't turn around without breaking one, and then you cash in on the fear.
Yep. So true today.
Yeah, definitely. Again, in cases where any of these parties have both the knowledge and intent to assist a sanctioned party in circumventing sanctions, it may be reasonable for the president to use existing authority to implement secondary sanctions. So, your ISP. However, it is
Well, it claims knowledge and intent there, but earlier in the story, it was talking about even without their knowledge.
No, I think this is the author of the article saying maybe it would be reasonable if people had knowledge and intent, but but the government is going far beyond what's reasonable.
Yeah, right. That's my interpretation too.
Okay.
However, it is unreasonable for Congress to demand, and if I keep reading it, that's the way it's saying. However, it is unreasonable for Congress to demand that the president sanction everyone matching such a broad description. Indeed, it is blatantly unconstitutional under the First Amendment to forbid the publication of open source computer code.
Scary.
Yeah, this is.
I mean, not just that. Anybody who sells computers.
Yeah.
Anybody who sells routers, who provides Cisco, of course. You know, you can't do anything without Cisco. They build all the big switches that all the data travels over.
As long as they can say Putin was here, then they can just arrest everybody.
Putin was everywhere.
If you follow the law, you're following a protocol. Therefore, you might be committing a crime under this new law.
Good luck following the law.
I know, right?
Putin causes myocarditis.
Out of time for tonight. You can join us online in the meantime over at freetalklive.com. And don't forget our social media site, social.freetalklive.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think